Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. Very excited because we have a fantastic show for you today. It's with social media sensation George Hahn, and we shall get to George shortly. And before we get into our two big things, which may actually be three big things today, but I wanted to ask you guys, how many beers a week do you drink?
Zero.
Okay, because you heard about the whole Democrat scandal of 2 beers a week, right?
I heard they're going to limit it, that you're just basically, Biden is personally going to limit everyone's beer
there's going to be like
consumption.
a whole beer police force, like Space Force.
This
Biden
seems
is creating a beer
like
force.
it's obviously going to happen.
Yeah, and Ted Cruz went nuts yesterday about it. He said, and this is why I'm bringing this up, he was like, Democrats just want to control your lives, and if you think I'm going to be drinking 2 beers, you can kiss my ass.
Yuck.
And he is so yucky. But here's the thing that I wanted to point out. It's like, first of all, abortion.
Exactly.
Abortion.
Oh, my God.
These motherfuckers, they literally crawl up a woman's vagina and control it. And this fucker has the nerve to go on this dramatic theatrical rant about Democrats controlling lives. Well, you know what, Ted Cruz? Kiss my ass. All right. That gets us to our two big things. That was kind of the rant before the rant.
I like that rant.
All right, Donald Trump.
You said in 2016, lock her up. And then when you became president, you said, we don't do that in America. That's just not the right thing to do. That's what they're doing. Do you regret not locking her up? And if you're president again, will you lock people up?
Well, I'll give you an example. The answer is you have no choice because they're doing it to us.
All right, well, first of all, they're not doing anything to you. You did it. You committed the crimes. They're coming after you. They're not coming after anybody else. This is not a witch hunt. This is not weaponization of the FBI and the Department of Justice. This is just simply the United States government, the state of Georgia, the state of New York, exercising its powers to uphold the rule of law. But the bigger takeaway from that clip is, be warned, people, this is an authoritarian. If he should ever step foot in that Oval Office again, our democracy is done. Done. Right there. I'm going to lock up my opponents. That's what he's going to do. This was a busy week for him. He asked Georgia to separate him from the other co-defendants in the January 6th trial. A couple have requested, under the speedy trial law, that they be at trial in October or as soon as possible. He, of course, wants to push it out as far as possible. He also decided not to attend his arraignment in Georgia, so he just pled guilty and waived his right to arraignment. Interestingly, down in Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp rejected the Republican calls for a special session to impeach Fani Willis. This is a big deal because these fuckers in the state legislature, they just want to remove her and end that case in their sycophantic fealty to this orange Jesus of theirs. And he said, quote, I have not seen any evidence that D.A. Willis's actions or lack thereof warrant action by the prosecuting attorney oversight commission. As long as I am governor, we're going to follow the law and the Constitution, regardless of who it helps or harms politically. We have to be very careful when you're in power, not to abuse that power. So good for him. It looks like Willis and the prosecution may have dodged a little bit of a bullet because it is something they could technically do, just like Republicans in the House are preparing to impeach Joe Biden over nothing.
Yeah, I think that this wasn't by accident or because Kemp is a good person. He remembers, he does have a memory of Trump supporting Perdue running against him as governor. He also remembers that they lost both Senate seats in Georgia because of Trump. So politically, he has a brain, and he realizes that going along with Trump and getting rid of Fani is a terrible political idea. And as he said, maybe unconstitutional in Georgia's constitution. It was mostly in response, I think, to Georgia State Senator Colton Moore, who came and did a video threat on Breitbart's War Room. And he said, he doesn't want to have to use his gun and have a civil war, but we have to do something, apparently.
Well, I think political expediency is certainly Kemp's motivation. And it's also self-preservation, his legacy. The problem we've seen in the last 8 years or so with Republicans is that they don't seem to give a shit about their own legacies and their own reputations. Donald Trump this week filed to have the New York State civil fraud suit dismissed. And then Tish James filed a motion saying, we don't even need a trial. There's so much evidence. We don't need a trial. And of course, that's a little bit of stage theatrics, but they are awaiting summary judgment, which is just an initial determination by the court to determine what the path is going to be going forward. And then the interesting thing also that I've been watching is this whole 14th Amendment thing. You look at New Hampshire, there's a likelihood that they're going to claim that Trump can't run because he is someone who has engaged, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion, which is what the 14th Amendment is. And if they start doing that in key swing states that are perhaps democratically controlled, like Michigan, Pennsylvania, there's a serious constitutional legal case to be made here. So that'll be interesting to follow. Rudy Giuliani. What a fall from grace, huh? That guy is not having a good time.
I think he was always this person, and we've just had it revealed to us what he's become. He isn't a different person than he was when he was mayor. It's just that we're seeing the true Giuliani, and he is desperate. He's desperate because he is broke. He's going to have to sell his $6.5 million apartment.
It's on the market.
Upper East Side.
The listing says the layout is, quote, thoughtful and inviting. I wish they would just reword that and say, like, is ideal for lying down and unzipping your pants. And this isn't a part, like, if you want to bring, like, a young chickie over and, like, just sort of surreptitiously have her try to blow you, this is an apartment for that. It's totally an amazing apartment for that. The last thing I want to mention is Mitch McConnell. Like, I've really had it with people who are making fun of him, who are making political jokes, who are just laughing and not showing an ounce of compassion to a human being just because of partisan politics. We sunk so low into the sewer that, I mean, this is the one response that just fucking drives me crazy. When people say things like, yeah, it's hard to have compassion because he did this and he did that. And it's like, all you're really saying there is because someone else was a douche, I could be a douche too. Like, at some point, you have to say, I got to do what's right. And when a senior citizen stands up there completely struggling, and some people, the thought that goes through their mind is, good, fuck him. Like, I don't know. I just don't get it.
I just want to point out, this is the party that said that John Fetterman wasn't fit to be a senator. And they are mostly behind him. Although I will say, moments after the Senate doctor released the letter saying that he was fine, the National Review immediately released an editorial saying that he should resign immediately from leadership.
Look, you can say, I hate Mitch McConnell. I think he destroyed this country. He enabled Trump. He's a bad person. But it pains me to see another human being stand up there and struggle with his health that way. Why do you have to say, like, I don't give a fuck what happened to him yesterday because he is responsible for Roe being overturned? Like, I just don't understand that mindset. Anyway, winners and losers. Let's get to it.
Okay. My winner, the Pope, for expressing his dismay at a very strong, organized reactionary attitude, that was in quotes, opposing him within the U.S. Catholic Church, one that fixates on abortion and sexuality to the exclusion of caring for the poor and the environment. Well done, Pope. My loser, Vivek Ramaswamy, who received a cease and desist letter and can no longer rap to Eminem songs on the campaign trail.
My winner today is Emma Martin, an incredible young journalist from the Daily Tar Heel UNC newspaper, on her powerful and emotional front page featuring messages sent during the horrific shooting that we had last week. My loser, Elon Musk, in a life-imitating art moment. If anyone has ever seen the Glass Onion movie with Miles Braun as the billionaire who lives in a giant glass house on an island, well, Elon Musk now has 2 cases opened up against him, one from the SEC and one from the Southern District of New York, about how he took Tesla money to buy millions and millions of dollars worth of specialized glass to build himself a glass house.
My loser this week Rudy Giuliani. He lost his defamation lawsuit brought by Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, the Georgia mother and daughter election workers. He will now be liable for massive punitive damages, and the icing on the cake is that the judge ordered America's broke-ass loser to pay their $90,000 legal fees. My winners, Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, who can now begin to reclaim their names, their reputations, and rebuild their lives after being unjustly attacked by the United States president and his sycophantic, disgraced former lawyer. That brings us to our weekly rant. Donald Trump vomits nonstop that President Joe Biden, Democrats, Rhino Republicans, the courts, judges, and prosecutors are all engaging in what he calls election interference. That, as always, it's all just one big fat deep state conspiracy against him. This whiny, pissy, grievance-obsessed serial criminal and traitor is having a hard time accepting the fact that he's no longer sitting in the corner office at Trump Tower, where he was accustomed to doing and saying whatever the fuck he wanted with impunity. He can't accept that he is not above the law, that his 4 indictments, 4 arrests, and 91 felony charges are the direct and exclusive result of his behavior and no one else's. The truth is, Donald Trump is facing an existential crisis the likes of which can and very likely will destroy him, personally, politically, and financially. His next 18 months, most of which will occur during his presidential campaign, will be consumed by trials. But let's be crystal fucking clear about one thing. Trump is running again for one reason only, to shield himself from prosecution, which explains why he's desperately trying to delay his trials beyond the 2024 election so that, in the event he wins, he can fire the prosecutors and shut the cases against him. He's simply trying to stay out of prison. Remember, the investigations into Trump and his criminality all began before he announced his candidacy. So, election interference, my ass. It's more like indictment interference. All right, let's get to our guest, George Hahn. When George Hahn is not needling, charming, or entertaining nearly 1 million followers across his social media channels, he's busy chronicling city life as a, quote, urban raconteur, writing for Graydon Carter's Airmail and his own website, hosting the occasional podcast, including Pivot with Kara Swisher, interviewing celebrities for entertainment news shows like Extra, appearing as a commentator on MSNBC's 11th Hour with Stephanie Ruhle, and The Sunday Show with Jonathan Capehart. When they let him, acting, having appeared on Sex and the City, Law and Order, and Kate and Leopold. He was also featured in recent issues of Esquire and The Rake. George, welcome into the back room.
Andy, what a pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine, as the saying goes. I'm a big fan. I love you. Not maybe in that way, but I will admit, if I was gay, you might be my type. I'm just throwing it out there.
That's really good to know, and I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, but seriously, I'm a huge fan. You're one of the people who sort of blossomed online during the COVID years, the Trump years, and really served to make people feel good because you said a lot of the things we were thinking. And so you kind of gave voice to a lot of people, still do. And you're funny as hell and you're smart. And, I think that's why you've grown in such popularity that you have, because you have a really important, very crystal clear voice. And so it is truly an honor for me to have you on here and talk to you today.
Well, Andy, it's really incredible to hear that. Thank you for saying it. I really appreciate it. I hope I can live up to it.
live up to your hype. I'm sure you will. So before we get into some other things, just want to first of all acknowledge that you are here fresh off of a colonoscopy, and that's big news.
True story.
Everything went well?
Everything went well. And just a shout out to anybody who's nervous about it. Just do it. There's so much stacked in the idea of it that puts a lot of people off. It's as I wrote today in my newsletter that I put out this morning, I try to do one every week. And I said, I don't care how much you're into ass play. No one looks forward to a colonoscopy.
That is some, by the way, I did one many years ago and I'm overdue, and I am one of the nervous people because I remember that kind of ass play and I'm not looking forward to it again.
Well, I forgot that the propofol was Michael Jackson's drug of choice. And when the nurse administered it to me when I was in the OR. She just kind of leaned into me and waved, and she said, "Good night, Mr. Hahn." And she said, "We're going to count to 20. I don't remember anything past 3.
Right.
Yeah, it was easy peasy. Truly,
Yeah.
the biggest bitch was the prep. That's all.
And getting back to ass play for a second,
Sure.
I think when most people, that's probably the first and last time I'll ever say that in my life. By the way,
I am your type, aren't I, Andy?
you are. You're funny. I like funny. I'm all about the funny. So getting back to ass play for a second, I think when most people think of ass play, especially in a positive way, they probably are not thinking about it happening alone in a bathroom all night. You know what I mean?
No, I would imagine not. No, God.
Yeah. I mean,
I had the night before I had stuff scheduled, and I realized I had, let's just say, overscheduled myself.
Did it involve a diaper?
It involved no, and that's why I just said, you know what, you guys, I'm gonna have to cancel. We'll do this another time, because you do the prep the night before. Anybody who's gone through this knows, as you do, you got to stay close to a bathroom. And
did they say to you? I remember when I did it, they said something like, "Oh, you have to take an enema." Did they make you do that, like in the morning?
No,
because he said to me, because we need to make sure at that point, before you come in, you're fully evacuated. And I was like,
right,
that's a weird word to use.
Oh, that is a weird word. Yeah. But Andy, them times has passed. We've progressed.
Well, I'm hoping that in the, what is it, maybe now 11 or 12 years since I had it, I'm hoping that medical technology has changed somewhat.
Well, I didn't get the tablet. I was given the Gavolite, which is this powder that you mix into 4 liters of water.
It was like a lemon drink. And I was like, oh, this isn't bad. And then like an hour later, all hell broke loose.
Right. You have to time it. And I thought, all right, I'm going to start at 4, because my appointment was the next morning. And that was the right timing. I have to say, the timing was good. Everything went swimmingly. And the only drag, as I wrote about this morning, the only drag was that Gavolite. It's not, you got to drink a shit ton of it, no pun intended. You got to drink a ton of it, and then it's not horrible, and it's certainly not delicious. It's just bleh, like it's just this kind of thing that you have to consume, and you have to consume all of it. Not in one sitting. I mean, you take breaks,
right?
But it's just like that's the worst part of it, I got to say. Now, when I got there the next morning, I was all sort of evacuated, as you said so eloquently. I said to the doctor and to the nurse, I said, you know what, we should do this, colonoscopy or not, we as adults, as humans, should do this sort of cleanse maybe once a year. I sort of started to wonder, like,
isn't that a colonic?
No, because a colonic goes in that end. This is from the top down. Oh. This cleans the whole system. Do you know what I mean?
You're talking about like putting a hose in your face and just like flushing the whole. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about Gavolite and what this thing does. The high powered.
Just drinking it like a colonoscopy and then having a whole.
Just clean yourself out. Like, is it to our benefit to do that? I don't know, once a year, once every 2 years, 3, whatever. Because I felt like I lost a quick 2 pounds, which was great. And then I felt sort of very clean.
You felt evacuated.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, colon cancer is not something to laugh at. It strikes a lot of people, men, and it is something that should be done. I thought it was every 10 years. My doctor said, we'll see you in 5. So I definitely have to go back. And I don't know if you want to throw props to your doctor, but definitely offline, I want to ask you who your doctor was, because I'm searching for an evacuation specialist.
Are you here in the city also?
I am.
Oh, we have to meet.
Yeah.
Having done it, and as an adult male who's of the age, I'm 52, it was time. It's empowering to have had it done.
Yeah.
I came away from it. It's just sort of like a health maintenance and preventative milestone. And I felt empowered.
You felt like you could diarrhea with the best of them all night long.
Right. Right.
A whole night of diarrhea. I mean, who doesn't love that?
Delicious.
Who doesn't find that empowering?
Aren't we glad we tuned in? Yummy.
All right, let's go back to Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh God.
That's where you were born.
Hmm.
I'm trying to imagine you in Cleveland, Ohio.
I recently tried to imagine myself in Cleveland to the tune of actually living there again
Yeah,
for
you
3 years.
moved there, I read.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was that like going back?
Going back was different because it was my first time living there as a rent-paying, tax-paying adult. I had
Right.
never seen.
But it's important to note that you moved back there to live after you had already lived in Manhattan. That's a
Correct.
That's a key part of the story.
Correct. The quick timeline is that I basically was raised in suburban Cleveland in a suburb called Lakewood from birth to 18, went to college in Boston, and then moved to New York in 94. I lived in New York for 22 years, and then in 2016 moved back to Cleveland and came back here in 2020. So it was the end of 2016 to 2020, basically 3 years I was in Cleveland, and then moved back just in time for the pandemic.
And,
so to answer your question about what it was like, Cleveland has its charms. It really does. A lot of people like to dump on Cleveland. I don't want to do that. It's got its charms. It's an amazing piece of real estate on one of the Great Lakes, and it's got a lot going for it. It's a great summer town if you have a boat or know someone who does. Culturally, the restaurant scene is vibrant. The music scene is crazy. There's a great art scene. But it wasn't for me. I miss New York terribly. And so the second I got an opportunity to move back here, I took it.
And you were an actor, theater guy when you were young, right? That was your major, and you moved to New York, assumably to work in acting. And you've done some stuff, obviously. And I saw that you were Joan Rivers' social media director. That's
correct.
Interesting. That must have been a fun job.
It was really fun. It certainly had some pressures, but worthwhile pressures. It was kind of the ride of a lifetime. I always referred to it as the unicorn that knocked on my door because it was the spring of 2014. That was the year she died. It was the spring of 2014, and her friend, partner, the president of her company, a guy named David, reached out to me and said, your tone kind of rhymes with Joan's on Facebook, and you have you have a snark, or however he put it. And he said, we don't have anybody running her social media. We're all kind of chipping in while doing our primary jobs at the company. Would this interest you? And Andy, I'm thinking this was a woman that we all saw on The Tonight Show. We just that was appointment viewing when Joan was guest hosting The Tonight Show when Johnny was off. And she was an idol of me and my father. And so when David pitched this to me, would this interest you? I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Pardon my French. And I grabbed it and took it, and it was an honor. And it's what I say, it was the unicorn that knocked on my door. And it was a great ride for the summer. And then she died at the end of that summer in a freak medical accident. But it was amazing. Really amazing. Yeah.
And I read, there's a quote that I found, which I found pretty funny. You say, quote, in the fall of 1994, I got an opportunity to move to New York. For my first 18 months in Manhattan, I worked as a receptionist in one of New York's most exclusive hair salons, where I made hair appointments for some of the most pulled faces in the Northern Hemisphere. My cousin, Catherine Hahn, I didn't know she was your cousin, eventually joined me behind the reception desk, where we both charged New York's wealthiest Prozac-stoned women thousands of dollars for highlights, bang trims, and manicures that didn't make them look any younger. Ouch.
Oh God, that is spicy. Wow.
That would be snark. That's some snark right there. Spicy snark.
That was spicy. Yeah.
But probably true. All true, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have said it, right?
Yeah.
Probably not going to get a job as a receptionist in a beauty salon anymore.
Well, I ended up getting a great job as a cosmetic dermatologist's concierge. And yeah, well, that was you're under HIPAA laws there, so I have to keep secrets. But yeah, that job was interesting to say the least. And for a sort of impressionable, nice, recovering Catholic from Cleveland, some of the behaviors I witnessed at that desk.
Oh, do tell.
The
Fuck HIPAA.
the
Give us one.
the salon's not HIPAA, so we can go there, but just the entitlement, and not everybody. There were some who were kind of great. Actually, in further endeavors in my life later down the road, I ran into some of those clients that were regulars at Garen's salon, and some of them were kind of great, but there were some standouts that it was usually people with new money. And that's my observation working in that sphere, where it's rarely, if ever, people who were either had it their whole lives, like Kennedy kind of money, or people who worked for it were generally the easiest ones. It was the new money people who were the biggest pain in the ass,
That's pretty much you could say that about most things in life that involve new moneyed people. They're kind of annoying.
They're just, they think it buys them this new brand of entitlement.
Yeah.
Example being at the cosmetic dermatologist. I'm not breaking HIPAA law. She's public about it. But Kelly Ripa was a patient, and she is a great example of someone who was really easy, pleasant, a delight to have her in the office. This is a woman, she and I are the same age. She's a woman from humble beginnings. Her father was a bus driver, and she came from not much and worked for every dime she earned. So you would think she might come to the table with a little entitlement, or it might be a little tricky. Nope. Easy. I had an easy time with her. She's a fair example of people who come from something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the business of show that don't take themselves very seriously and are just truly good, nice people. And like everything else in life, they're assholes and they're nice people.
Right.
So I heard you talk this week about your parents and how they were loving, and it was very sweet the way you were talking about them. What did your parents do work-wise when you were growing up?
My dad was a madman in my earliest memory. I was born in 1970, and through the 70s, most of the 70s, my dad was in advertising. He was an account executive. Like an account supervisor. If anybody is familiar with Mad Men, my dad was Pete Campbell, minus the psychological issues. But my dad had Pete's job. Pete Campbell was an account executive, like a supervisor. And then he got other opportunities. He had his own boutique ad and marketing and PR firm for a while. And then got an opportunity in the corporate world and took it and made more money. He was like a vice president of a company in Cleveland called Pubco. The company still exists. And that was his last gig. He died when he was my age, actually, 53. I'm almost 53.
What did he die?
And he had heart issues. He had a bypass once when I was very young, like 3 or 4, and then had another one when I was 19, he was 53, and he died the next day. Just a lot of damage, and he had an enlarged heart. There was scar tissue from the first surgery 17 years prior. So it runs in our family, so I'm quite cautious of it, and I'm in great shape. Everything looks good in this house, as it were. And my mother was Betty Draper. She went to a nice New England college, Marymount, up in Westchester, which is no longer. And then came to the city and lived a few years, had roommates, and partied, modeled. She was a model. She was a photographer's assistant. I think she had a little retail experience here in the city. And then met the guy who would become her first husband, and whose name was Don. And I think he worked in advertising.
I
And
love
then
how,
she
like,
married.
a lot of people, when you ask them about their childhood, they say, "Oh, it was so idyllic. It was like Father Knows Best. It was Leave It to Beaver." Like, you're like, I grew up in Mad Men.
Kind of,
Yeah.
except my mother, unlike Betty Draper, my mother was a good mother. Like she Betty should have never had kids. My mother was, I don't want to canonize my parents, but let's just say if I had my own kids, I'd borrow a lot from their notebook.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's probably the best
So
compliment you can ever give them, you know?
absolutely. Listen, I don't have any parental advice to give anybody, but I can recall what my mother said to me, that when she was seeking counsel for something when we were all kids, and she said the best advice she ever got was that you can only give your children two things. You can love them and give them a sense of values. That's all you can do.
Mm.
And stepping back, and I kind of go, yeah, we were loved and we were given pretty good values, so I'll take it. Was it perfect? No, but they did their best, and I think it was pretty damn good.
Yeah, well, those things are, sadly, there's a shortage of that these days.
Mm-hmm.
I first became aware of you, I think it was that video you did in 2020 where you were walking down the streets. I think it was when Republicans all over the country were like, "Oh my God, what the fuck is happening in New York?
Right.
Kind of COVID, it's like an apocalypse." And so you opened your phone, you were walking around the city, and you were saying, like, "Oh my God, look what's happening here. It's awful. People are eating ice cream, gay ice cream." And it was so funny, but it was also like such an indictment on the stupidity of these people and the accusations that they were making, because when it started to reopen, life really was kind of back to normal pretty quickly. And so
Yeah.
when was it that you first got the idea, like, all right, I'm just going to start walking around with my phone and rant? How'd that happen?
That was the first time.
Wow.
Time. How that happened was this. I was walking down Columbus Avenue with my dogs that night. I think it was the first week of September in 2020. And Molly Jong-Fast, the political journalist, I would say pundit, really. She's a writer and does a lot of TV. And she and I have become good friends since, because she's responsible for my fame, as it were. She had posted something on Twitter and mentioned in a podcast, after posting a picture of her street. It was a tranquil setting. She lives on the East Side. And she was accused of posting something that was fake news. Like, there were people who don't live in New York telling her that her image of New York wasn't real. I live here. You live here. Anybody who lives here knows. Also, mind you, this was that summer. We had George Floyd. We had
Right.
demonstrations. Not for nothing, there were some issues, but it wasn't anywhere near on the scale that certain media outlets were claiming it was. Everything was actually quite okay. And I literally decided to make a video reacting to Molly's comment about someone saying that she was posting fake news. And I literally, Andy, fired up my phone and recorded 77 seconds walking down Columbus Avenue, walking my dogs. It was one take. What you saw was what it was, and that was it. And I uploaded it to Twitter, and it was a response to Molly. And then she retweeted it. And because she had 1 million followers, that's how it kind of started. That was the spark that lit the bonfire. And it went viral, because Molly knows people, and the people who know Molly know other people. And I was getting these messages that, do you know so-and-so is following you now? And that just scared the shit out of me. But yeah, that was the first one. And it was a reaction to the bullshit claim that New York was on fire.
But there's such a magic to what you do because of the timing, the delivery, and then your punchline is usually just a stop and then a look.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you would have a punctuation that just brought it back to reality. And they're very funny, but they're also very biting. And, the whole for me, like the way you would say that all the time. So I found that, I don't know, I became like a 15-year-old kid when I
It still
coached.
drives me nuts.
But then
Yeah.
also like it's not fair and all the things you say that just
Yeah.
mock the stupidity
Victimhood.
of victimhood.
Victimhood,
Well, because we live with Trump, we live in an age of victimhood.
aggrieved victimhood. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm going after.
So
Yeah.
with your work, if there ever was like a bon vivant man about town, it's you. If you go to your website, there's so much that you do, from podcasting to acting to styling to this, that, the other thing. What would you say is the bulk of what you do these days?
It's so hard to answer when people ask me what I do because, as you just articulated, I wear a lot of hats. It's like I'm like a Swiss Army knife. Which blade do you want now? I'm a generalist. I write. In addition to what I do on my own blog and my newsletter and on social media, I'm a contributor to Airmail, which is a privilege to work for Graydon Carter. I've also started contributing, although nothing published yet. It's going to be an issue or two down the line, but contributing to a magazine here in New York called Avenue, and occasionally do commercial work, acting work when the show business people let me. That's always been a big trick. Like, I'm not real good at that. That's always what I've always wanted to do. Like, the only thing I ever really wanted to be was an actor. But since I've never been particularly lucky, and haven't had much success in that area, everything else you're seeing, the writing, making these videos on social media, this is all plan B, C, D, E, F. Like, this is all,
And the podcasting
So-
stuff has been getting really interesting too. I mean, you hosted Pivot with Kara Swisher, who
a
actually
total
is
delight.
coming back on this podcast again next week.
She's great. I love her so
you
much.
do a lot with Scott Galloway, and then you have your own pod that you've done in the past. How did you get into Kara and Scott's orbit?
I barged into their world on Twitter, actually. It started on Twitter. I was a fan of Kara when she had her previous podcast, Recode Decode, or whatever it was called. Scott was a guest, and then they did Pivot, and I'm like, who is this guy? And she was so smart and interesting. And I have a real nerdy part of my brain that's a little obsessed with tech, and so that she was right up my alley in terms of content. But she's also got a versatility. She goes into politics, pop culture, lifestyle stuff, and same with Scott. Although they each have their corners of real sort of expertise. Anyway, Twitter is how I barged into their lives, and they eventually unlocked the door, and I just kind of came in, and we became friends, and that's really how it was. That's been a real. Scott has talked about this before, with me specifically and other people, but in general, a silver lining during the pandemic and social media has been a connection to people like with Scott, with Kara, and others as well. Yeah,
Absolutely. And so one of the things you do is you post daily photos. How do you come upon the themes that you select when you are posting? Because a lot of them they're black and white. They're kind of filmy, there's a nostalgic, cinematic feel to them. But is there a message? Are you just posting photos you like, or are you trying to somehow cryptically make us go, what's in this photo that George is trying to tell us?
What I like, and I think what we've been missing over the years, is glamour. There is a certain sense of occasion that we've lost, just in our own self-presentations, in the way we approach life, the way we approach the day, the way we approach the office, the street, the restaurant. There's a certain sense of occasion that we've lost. It sounds frivolous, Andy, but I think if things have gotten very also sort of restless and combative even in our culture. And there was a period, I haven't seen any in I don't see as many now as we did like a couple of years ago. But during the pandemic, there were these videos that people would post where it was usually white people like kind of popping off in public and spinning out, like whether it was at a Starbucks, a Walmart, on an airplane. That was one of the greatest hits. People just losing it and fighting. And this is going to sound, I'm trying to figure out a way to say this without sounding like an idiot, but here goes. I honestly believe that if we're going to dress like we're going to a boxing class, we're going to be ready like to be boxing. If I'm not saying wear a tux everywhere, but when I travel, I generally wear a tailored jacket. I don't want to throw a punch. I'm not feeling particularly combative when I know I look good. Do you know what I mean? I'm too busy looking good, and it changes my
Better
demeanor.
to look good
it changes...
than feel good. The man said that, right?
One takes care of the other. You know what I mean? If you don't feel good, look good, something might shift. Act as if, as they say. So when I love tailored clothing, I don't wear it all the time. I'm not wearing it right now, of course, but something in my demeanor shifts and changes. And I carry myself differently. There's a certain sophistication, a certain civilized demeanor.
Well, it's dress for success. I mean, that's the old adage.
That a lot of us have lost it, and it does affect how we behave. When, as an actor, and any actor will tell you this, particularly stage actors, you spend weeks rehearsing a play and learning a character, and you start with your script in hand, and then eventually you're off book, you've got it memorized, and you're rehearsing, and you kind of got the character down, and you're ready to go into dress rehearsal. Something shifts. Ask any actor. Something shifts, or there's always a change when you put on the clothes of the character. When you put on that character's shirt, pants, shoes, something shifts because you've been rehearsing in sneakers and jeans or whatever. But when you put on that character's stuff, your body changes, your performance, tone, attitude. There's a little shift. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small. That is the power of, for lack of a better word, costume. And as RuPaul says it perfectly, we're born naked and the rest is drag. So what I'm wearing right now is drag. Your hoodie is drag. Like, it's all drag. So the drag affects us and how we carry ourselves. The man in full drag, and he'll start sashaying. Something happens when you put the heels on. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's my approach.
Talk to me about the peacoat.
My peacoat?
I know you're a big fan of the peacoat.
It's such a classic, really. Like, every guy should have one. The first real peacoat that I got was so good. I got it at a flea market down in the East Village with my friend Mick and his then girlfriend Suzanne. This was in the late 90s, and I think I paid maybe $60 for this vintage peacoat that belonged to an actual seaman from the 1950s, a guy named Charles Way. His name was in it. And his his officer number was in it, and I managed to track him down. He died a few years ago. But that peacoat was so fantastic. It was made of this wool that I've never seen, durable. Like, once upon a time, they were really made to last. And that it kind of died. Like, honestly, it fit perfectly. I still miss it. I had to get rid of it because it just kept falling apart. Like, it was so old and it become threadbare. Because it was literally, what is this, I got rid of it in like 2021. So it was like 70 some years old. And I found a new one, and it's my favorite garment to wear in the fall and winter, easily.
It's one of those kind of jackets that, there are people that try to be so cool all the time, but then there are people who just do things that are just naturally cool, and wearing a peacoat is naturally cool.
It's such a handsome thing. It's such a handsome garment. Yeah.
Getting back to like videos and photos for a second, the other day you posted Doris Day riding on her bicycle, which was a real hoot. What's with Doris Day? What were you saying?
A little background on that, by the way. I was reposting something from Allison Martino. Alison Martino is Al Martino's daughter.
No.
Al Martino played Johnny Fontaine in The Godfather.
Great character.
Johnny Fontaine. He was the character that the horse head was all about Johnny. And Allison, his daughter, does vintage LA stuff, and I love her feed. Like, she's great at capturing vintage LA. She posted that. I love a bicycle. I don't have a car. Haven't had one since '94. I love getting around the city on a bike. I think we have forgotten about the glamour of that because Americans associate bicycling with like spandex and taint padding and 3-pound carbon fiber bicycles. It's like, no. Where's the pleasure when, a Raleigh or a Schwinn and you could wear shorts or a tuxedo? It didn't matter.
I gather you're not talking about a city bike, right?
You could wear anything on a city bike.
Okay.
Those are, you can't really race around on those. I think they cap at like 14 miles an hour, but not the electric ones. Those go at a pretty fast clip. But yeah, I love that Doris. Are you kidding me? Look at that Doris Day video. She is so goddamn happy on that bike. That smile on her face. I have never seen anyone behind a wheel of a car looking like that. She is just all bliss.
You should see me in my convertible. I give Doris. Doris a run for her money.
My last car was a convertible, and you have a sympathetic ear here. I get it. I loved it.
Doris Day is such a phenomenon because she's really a beautiful woman. She's very vibrant, vivacious. But as a man, I never saw any sex appeal in her whatsoever.
I think that was probably part of the image. That's what made her money. That's what got her hired. That's what the studio wanted her to do and her to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was part of the.
They did
she
it
was
well.
part of the studio system. Yeah,
they succeeded.
And yeah, but apparently, from what I hear, like behind the scenes and in real life, she was a lot more fun, and there was a sexuality there that got very much downplayed. For us as her film viewing audience. Yeah. But I know what you're saying. Like she's very pretty. Like I can look at her and acknowledge like that's a very pretty lady. But in terms of a sexual charge, like I'm not really.
She did spend a lot of time with Rock Hudson, and
right.
We know how that worked out for
right.
So,
Rock.
Have you seen the documentary on Rock Hudson?
I did. Did you? It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. The great thing about documentaries is that you can think you know someone that's been in your life in some way for decades. And then all of a sudden you watch a movie and you're like, fuck, I had no idea who this person was. Truly.
Right.
I had no idea. So your Central Park walk on Wednesday. Oh my God.
Which one? The rant?
The rant. That
yeah.
That was that you called it a tirade. It was that was epic. That really was like, if you ever had like a greatest hits album, that's your Freebird, man. That is your Freebird. That's the one they're going to be screaming out like as you ride your bike past them in Central Park. They're going to be like, Wednesday, August 29. It was unbelievable. And I need to ask you, how does that...
you though?
Huh?
Doesn't it hit you though, like a wall once in a while? Doesn't it?
Oh my God! I literally I posted something this morning. I was like, enough already. I wake up, and it's like, when are we gonna have that day where he's just gone? He's vaporized. We don't see him. We don't talk about him. We don't hear him. It's not the first thing we see and the last thing we see. He doesn't dominate the news. But yeah, of course. And so when I was listening to your rant, like. I have so many questions about your walks in Central Park. Like the first one is, do people look at you like you're crazy? Because I remember during the Trump years, I'd be listening on my headphones like to Joy Reid or something, and they'd be playing a clip, and I'd hear his voice, and I would just scream, fuck. Like I'd walk my dog and just be screaming. And people would look at me like, just move along, children. He's just another crazy city person. And like, so when you are doing that for 20 minutes, are you just so into that rant that you don't see anybody that may be watching you or looking at you or wondering what the hell is this guy doing?
People do look at me like I'm strange when I'm doing those walk in the park videos, but I think we're at a time right now in terms of the way we use our tech and social media that people are pretty used to seeing people doing selfie shit, you know? So it's not that exotic anymore.
You
but
must
people
get
do.
recognized too, right? I mean, I think people who
I
are on
do.
social media a lot have to know who you are if they're on Instagram or Twitter, right? So
My favorite is when I get recognized while I'm doing a video, which is but my one of my favorite recognition moments, and honestly, Andy, I'd love to know what is in the cosmos. I run into Michael Rappaport at least once a month
that's insane.
in the same place in the park. I'm not timing when
crazy.
I go there. I'm not conscious of any consistent time that I'm winding up there. It happened 2 days ago. In the same spot, I run into Rappaport every goddamn time. It's at the same spot. It's at the intersection where the reservoir almost meets the road. And it's just like, why? There is literally a Michael and George magnet in this 30-foot area, circumference area. I'm like, why do I run into him?
That's so funny because he does very similar type videos
spot
too. He's
he's
ranting.
Michael and I, we're kindred spirits in that way, and I adore him, and we adore one another.
You're very cognizant sometimes of things around you, like in this Wednesday rant, for example. You could be in the middle of this vitriolic, like Trump is a mother. Hey, did you see that woman on that phone? She's holding it like a walkie-talkie. Like you can switch gears so quickly. Like you just switch gears, and you do that a lot. In this video, there was like babies crying in the background. There was a saxophone player playing Billy Joel. There was the woman with the.
There was that bird
woman.
that bird that took the
bird,
rat.
The bird. There's you're walking, and all of a sudden you stop. You're in the middle of this rant about Trump, and you're like, holy shit, a bird just grabbed a rat and flew away. And then you went off on the bird and how fucking amazing that was and how you wished you had taped it. You could see it because that would have gotten you several million.
It was
hits,
amazing.
by the way. But you were trying to figure out, was it a hawk? And then without missing a beat, you'd be like, all right, so Trump. Like you just go, like, how does that stream of consciousness come out so fluidly?
It is
very impressive.
Literally off the. Thank you. It is literally off the cuff shit. Rarely, if there is a big news event, and I can't recall when there has been one, I know I've done it this way, where I will sort of not pre-plan it because those morning walks are completely improvised. I don't go in with an agenda, except sometimes what I'll start talking about is triggered by what I've just been listening to on a given podcast or on the morning news.
Right.
But generally, no, I am just kind of going, let's see, like, before I hit go live or whatever the button is on Instagram, I'll think like, all right, what did I watch last night? What did the dogs do this morning? What in the last 24 hours happened that was at least semi not boring?
But the things you said in that video, like, I don't know if you're a fan of Rick Wilson, but I
love Rick
he
Wilson.
Is I call him a cunning linguist, but
that's perfect.
Yeah, you're
He's
like,
great.
I cannot believe we're here, and you're talking about Trump. That he has traction, fans vote. He's a fucking skank. He's their personal jam, and then you're like, people are just fucking disgusting. What the hell is wrong with you? Did you eat a lot of paint chips? Then you feel bad about Melania and Stormy Daniels, how they had to ever lay down with this guy. He has muscle tone like a wet Nerf ball. Like, this is really like, if that shit is just rolling out from your brain as you're walking in the park with your dog, you're like a poet, man. You're a poet, and you may not know it.
The muscle tone one.
Yeah.
It is, because it is gross. I suppose it's just a window into my brain in terms of where I go in my head when I think about that guy, because he is just so fucking gross. I imagine being near him when you hear him breathe on a microphone, and when he exhales, it's like a fart to me. Like, he is just so disgusting. I would imagine like the breath when you get near him. Oh God, so disgusting. I have a friend who shares my political values, and he and his significant other, a woman, they have relatives, or she has relatives who are members at Mar-a-Lago. And they were in Florida and they went to Mar-a-Lago for dinner. And I was like, oh God, why? But anyway, he was just being, you just be nice. And Trump came in, he was there and came to their table.
Where
'cause he knew
else is he
someone
going to
at the
be?
table. Right. And he just, my friend Mike just said like the tingles that went up his spine of fury. And it was just such an alternate reality experience. And I think I might have imploded had I been in that. I literally though, I think I probably would have gotten up and left the table and waited until he was gone. Be like, I have to go to the bathroom, or just made up some excuse and then just waited for him to leave, then come back. I wouldn't have been able to take it. But yeah, that's where my head goes. I think he's that fucking gross. I can't believe that this is where we are culturally, intellectually, politically. People accuse me of living in a bubble, in this liberal bubble. I think it's actually just the opposite. Find me any other place in the country where you can walk 1 or 2 city blocks and hear 5 or 10 different languages and people from different backgrounds. You can't. Maybe LA, but no one's walking. Yeah, so it just astounds me that this is where we are. I can't fucking believe this is where we are.
Yeah, well, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's a long tunnel, but
it's a long one. And
a light.
Andy, if he keeled over and died tomorrow, it's not gonna end. There's still, I don't know, there are millions of people, as I said in that rant the other day, I think, there are millions of people who think his way of thinking, talking, being is just how shit should be. And I'm just like, oh God.
Well, I
really?
I highly urge everyone to go to Instagram and check out George's rant from Wednesday, because I actually think you probably could have gone straight from that rant to your colonoscopy and not had to drink that shit, because you were on fire that day. You exploded on that walk. So you might have spared yourself some of that colonoscopy pain. So the last thing I want to do with you to get a bigger window into George Hahn is to do a little lightning round with you. Favorite movie of all time?
All About Eve.
Okay. Favorite TV show? What are you binging right now?
Favorite TV show ever?
Or now?
I would say Mad Men is probably my favorite TV show ever.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not just because of the style, just like it was such great storytelling and just a great story about people and relationships. Yeah.
Favorite male actor?
A living or dead? It doesn't matter. Probably was Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Good choice. Female actor?
Meryl Streep.
Favorite musical artist?
Prince.
Are you a Swiftie?
No.
Said that rather quickly. Everything else you hesitated. Swiftie, like, no, that came out in like a half a second.
I think I could identify maybe 3 of her songs.
Okay. Favorite stand-up comic?
Oh, God.
You want to go Louis C.K., don't you?
No, I don't. My favorite comics right now, all right? Right now, my favorite stand-up comic is Maria Bamford.
Okay.
I've been listening to her a lot lately. Or Tig Notaro.
Good choice.
Yeah.
What are you currently reading? Or do you not read?
I do read. I am reading
The Tig Notaro story.
No. I am reading Paul Rudnick, the playwright Paul Rudnick's book. It's called Farrell Covington and the Limits of Style.
Okay.
Novel.
What do you most like about New York City, living in New York City?
The fact that I don't need a car. I mean, that's, oh God, is that what I really like most about it? That's one thing. There's so many things. My God.
That's a big one.
One more thing. Yeah, but
Ready?
Access.
Okay.
Access. That's what I love about New York City. New York City is about access. I changed my previous answer and changed it to access. We have access to everything here. Even if you want to go to the beach, it's not far away. You want to go skiing, it's not far away.
Mhm.
If you want to go to a Broadway show or see a movie before it opens anywhere else in the country, we've got that here.
Favorite museum?
MoMA.
Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Oh, God.
I knew you were going to say that, and I asked on purpose. You probably have like some awesome little cafe that you buy your special coffee that no one else
Well, don't
does.
you?
I don't drink
Don't
coffee.
you?
I'm a tea guy. I haven't had coffee in about 30 years.
Oh, gosh, we have so much to talk about, Andy.
I know. I stopped drinking coffee like right before they invented, as Larry David likes to say, new coffee bullshit drinks. So
Right. I drink coffee black, nothing in it, which is infuriating. So on the rare occasions when I do go to Starbucks, and that is my preference between those two hells, I am invariably in line behind someone who's trying to figure out what they want, where they are, and who they are with some fucking Barbie Dreamhouse latte. And I'm just like, Jesus, grow the fuck up. Where's the grown-ups line where I just want a black coffee? Jesus, it's just gotten so specialized. I hate it.
It's so true. All right, last one. Favorite hair product? And I know you're a user.
I am,
How do
and
you get
I
that
am right
great hair of
now.
yours?
This hair is shaped with a product called Layrite. It is a hair cream, comes in a can. It's a matte cream. They also make glossier finish stuff, like with a shine, but mine's got a matte finish. It's like a paste, like the texture of peanut butter, and it washes out, like it's water soluble. It's called Layrite. Like it might even call itself a pomade. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There you go, folks. The secret to George's amazing hair. Layrite.
Yeah.
Which you can pretty much use for your whole life too, right? Just if you lay right, you're probably going to have a pretty good life. Right?
Yeah, I try to lay right all night.
George, we could probably do this for another 3 hours.
Easily.
Which means you'll have to come back and let's do Hang in the City. I'm downtown. I don't know where you are, but this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad you came on, and I look forward to the next time.
Likewise, Andy. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, take care. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Matty Rosenberg, and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Lengyel. And special thanks to Patricia Wynn. If you like what we're doing here, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards. Have a great week.